So, welcome to today's briefing about the humanitarian crisis in Armenia, led by Dr. Ohannes Geukjian. My name is Sarah Brown, and I am the Executive Director of the Center for Holocaust, Human Rights, and Genocide Education. And before I continue, I want to note that our center is housed on the occupied territory of the Lenape people. Now, for those of you who are new to Change, welcome. And for those of you who have been with us before, welcome back. Our center has worked now for the past 41 years to promote the elimination of anti-Semitism, racism, and all forms of prejudice through innovative education about the Holocaust, other instances of genocide like the Armenian genocide, and human rights. While our center remains closed because of the pandemic, we have gone fully virtual. This means that we have been able to provide now over 30 programs that have reached over 30,000 people. Please visit our website, www.change.org, to learn more about our available resources to support virtual learning and teaching. You can also there view the various programs that we have scheduled for the fall. And if you're interested in scheduling a virtual tour of our exhibit, Journeys Beyond Genocide, The Human Experience, which features the Armenian genocide, the Holocaust, and the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, you'll find that information on our website. Now, a couple of housekeeping items regarding today's program. First and foremost, your audio will remain muted throughout the program, but the chat feature is enabled. Please feel free to communicate with one another there. And at the end of the presentation, please feel free to type your questions into the chat box. At the end of the presentation, we will get to as many as possible. Now, today we're engaging in a difficult and timely conversation, and it is one that is taking place across the globe. The conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan has just entered its second month, and last weekend, Genocide Watch declared the targeting of civilians in Armenia by Azerbaijan a genocide emergency, specifically citing Azerbaijan's aggression against the Armenian Republic. 105 years since the start of the Armenian genocide on April 24th, 1915, Armenians are again facing targeted attacks. This is a difficult time for Armenians living in and beyond Armenia, and we thank you for being here, not just to learn about the conflict, but also to learn how to effectively advocate for a stop to this violent aggression. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Dr. Hachik Moradian for helping me to conceptualize this briefing, and Change staff Nicole Rizzuto and Ali Evans for helping to make today's program possible. And a very special and warm thank you to Dr. Ohannes Geukjian for joining us from halfway around the world and for sharing your knowledge with us today. It is now my honor to briefly introduce Dr. Geukjian. He is an assistant professor of comparative politics and conflict resolution in the Department of Political Studies and Public Administration at the American University of Beirut. Dr. Geukjian is a prolific writer, and if I were to sit here and list all of the various articles and books, we would never get to his briefing. So suffice it to say, he's published at least 3 books and numerous articles about the South Caucasus region and Armenian-Azeri relations. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Geukjian today. Now I'm going to mute myself and hand things over to him. And with that, welcome and thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you to the Center for Holocaust, Human Rights, and Genocide Education. Particular thanks to Sarah, Nicole, Ali, who made this event possible. So let me start. I have 45 minutes, around 45 minutes, and I need to summarize the situation. First of all, I will talk about the Soviet period, avoiding the medieval period because there is no time. So I will go over quickly the Soviet period, then independence of Karabakh in 1991, seceding from Azerbaijan, then few words on the war between 1992 and 94, the ceasefire, then the peace process that started in 1992, unfortunately, after around 30 years, there was no progress, and occasionally the ceasefire agreement was broken a number of times. Shortly, I will refer to the Madrid principles, but will not go to details. And then few words on the 2006 war, then the July and September war that has been the fiercest. Afterwards, I will talk a little bit about the region, the regional dimension, also the regional actors in the conflict, Turkey, Iran, Russia in particular, the OSCE Minsk Group, why diplomacy didn't work, and bring the talk to an end by referring to the broken ceasefires, at least 3 so far, and we don't know what is happening now in Geneva. Negotiations are being, talks, not negotiations, where talks are being conducted between the foreign ministers of Azerbaijan and Armenia under the auspices of the co-chairs of the Minsk Group, France, United States, and Russia. All right, so my talk will focus on all these issues, themes. Let me start quickly by referring to the Bolshevik period, as I said a while ago. In the 1920s, it is important to refer shortly to the entry of the Bolsheviks into the Caucasus and their promise that they would solve the territorial disputes and conflicts between the peoples of the Soviet Union yes, taking into consideration the ideology of communism, that all peoples are brothers and sisters, and that conflicts will certainly disappear in that mood of brotherhood, and peace will prevail. So very quickly, in 1921, the Bolsheviks, actually the Caucasian Bureau, the CAV Bureau, the Caucasian Bureau of the Communist Party convened and addressed the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Stalin was prevailing in that meeting, and the Caucasian Bureau took a decision to keep, to remain, the decision, let me use the word, allocate, or yes, allocate the Nagorno-Karabakh region inside Azerbaijan, granting it autonomous status. It is important to emphasize that a statute was promised, that a statute will be drafted, a particular statute to Nagorno-Karabakh was to be drafted later on, and Karabakh would enjoy administrative autonomy, running its own affairs, and therefore enjoying autonomous status. It is very unfortunate that the statute was never drafted, and very quickly it became clear that the autonomy, the promised autonomy to the Armenians, who were the majority, over 90% of the population in Karabakh, never enjoyed autonomy. To open a parenthesis, just to tell you that the decision of the CAV Bureau was not legitimate. It lacked legitimacy. For sure, it did not actually fulfill the expectations of Karabakh Armenians. But as I said a while ago, the CAV Bureau was the body responsible to address the conflict, and it made the decision. Now, there may be arguments some people would like to forward and put forward, saying that as long as the Calf Bureau was the body responsible for the Caucasus, then the decision was actually genuine and legitimate, but this is not correct. Such an argument is not correct because the decision was illegitimate. It neither satisfied the Armenians nor the Azerbaijanis. Now, during the Soviet period, as I said a while ago, the Armenians were discriminated against by both the authorities in Moscow, the center, and Union Republic Azerbaijan itself. There was nationalities policy in the Soviet Union at that time, and whatever Moscow decided, the republics were supposed to follow and implement. Now, the problem was that the republics had more rights and more authority to dominate on the autonomous regions and autonomous republics or areas within their territorial, within their borders. And because Nagorno-Karabakh was inside Azerbaijan, therefore, Azerbaijani authorities assumed that they have the constitutional authority to implement their economic, cultural, social policies accordingly. And this happened all the way during the Soviet period until 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed. It is also important to bring to your attention that after the formation and establishment of the autonomous region, the Armenians of Karabakh who were unhappy with the decision continuously wrote petitions asking the central government in Moscow to reconsider the decision, because that was unfair, unjust, expressing at the same time their will to unite with Armenia, as long as there was a long history I didn't refer to, I will not refer to, as I told you a while ago, the medieval period after that. So there was a long history, and during that historical period, Karabakh has always been part of Armenia. The response of the authorities in Moscow were that Karabakh authorities should petition the central government in Azerbaijan and accordingly actually raise the issue and see how a solution could be reached. So always Moscow escaped from taking a position and making a decision, although it was able to do so, but it didn't. Now, the autonomy promised, as I said, was never respected until in the 60s, 50s, 40s. In 1965, on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the Armenian genocide, there was a huge demonstration in Yerevan, Armenia, asking to reconsider the status of Karabakh, but again, nothing happened. In the 70s, 80s, petitions were written again, but I mean, there was no actually action taken by Moscow. Anyway, it was an interesting period, and one would like to review those petitions and the response of the Soviet authorities and the position of the Azerbaijani government that was not in favor, certainly, and that's why, I mean, nothing happened. There was no change until 1985-86, when Gorbachev came to power and he introduced his reforms, including tried to introduce the reforms, including the policies of perestroika and glasnost, economic restructuring, and democratization. So Karabakh Armenians wanted to express actually their will because there was the policy of democratization. So demonstrations were organized asking unity with Armenia. Pogroms followed, committed by the Azerbaijanis in Sumgait as a response. So Gorbachev himself also was unable to resolve the conflict. The region was put under direct Soviet administration in order to see what could be done, but also, but again, that didn't work until 1990-1991, when actually the Soviet Union broke, and the Union republics conducted referendums and declared independence from the Union. They separated from the Union. Moscow itself wanted to get rid of the burden of the unions, and therefore we got the independent republics of the former Soviet Union, including Azerbaijan and Armenia. Now, according to the Soviet Constitution of 1977, Article 3 of that Constitution, that says when a Union Republic separates from the Union, the autonomous regions and autonomous republics that were in that republic have the right also to a constitutional right to conduct a referendum and separate. And this was actually what happened exactly in 1991. So after Azerbaijan separated from the Union and declared independence, the Karabakh authorities at that time did the same thing, conducted the referendum and separated from Azerbaijan. And but that was not actually a solution. Certainly, tensions continued to accumulate. There were occasional clashes until 1992, 1993, when there was full-scale war between Karabakh and Azerbaijan, and that war, the result of that war was an Armenian victory in 1994. Russia mediated a ceasefire, the Bishkek Protocol, and fighting ended. And after, certainly, after the military victory, it was a military victory for the Armenians. The Azerbaijanis were not happy with the situation, but very quickly, even before the end of the war in 1992, the OSCE, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, tried to mediate, and actually it mediated, and a Minsk Group was formed at that time. So in order to address the conflict and see how it could be solved by peaceful means. So the Minsk Group, actually the co-chairs of the Minsk Group, Russia, France, and the United States. Russia joined in 1994, and that Minsk Group was responsible for finding a peaceful solution to the conflict. Negotiations started as I told you, from 1992. I will not refer to the details, but a number of peace plans were introduced. In 1997, a phased solution, step by step. Also in 1997, a package solution to address all the issues at the same time. In 1998, the common state solution, all of them didn't work. In 2007, the Madrid principles were introduced, and these principles are on the negotiations table, were and still are, but certainly, again, there was no solution. Now, very quickly, I would like to read for you the Madrid principles because this is important. So the principles say, return of the occupied territories surrounding Nagorno-Karabakh, the adjacent territories where the war now is going on. Fizuli, Zankelan, Jabrail, Kubatli, those adjacent territories. Secondly, an interim status for Nagorno-Karabakh providing guarantees for security and self-governance. Thirdly, a corridor linkage linking Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh, and that was the Lachin corridor. Fourthly, future determination on the final legal status of Nagorno-Karabakh through a legally binding expression of will. So a referendum was to be organized later on. Fifthly, the right of all internally displaced persons and refugees to return to their former places or residence. And finally, international security guarantees that would include a peacekeeping operation. The peacekeeping operation, as you realize, I mean, this is not a new idea. Currently, the Russians are trying to, once again, introduce observers being deployed in the area to monitor a ceasefire that would be agreed on between the parties. But still, this is not. This is unclear so far. At that time, also, the idea of a peacekeeping mission being deployed to Nagorno-Karabakh was not a matter of consensus, because the composition of that force actually was a crucial issue. Russia insisted that the force would be composed of CIS, from the CIS countries, Commonwealth of Independent States, that was established after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Azerbaijan didn't agree. Turkey wanted to join. Armenia didn't agree. So shortly, I mean, these principles were just principles, and they were to be negotiated. They were a framework for the negotiations, and the parties were to negotiate in order to reach solutions. Again, I mean, there was no solution that would satisfy both parties. 2006 war, the 4 days war, all of you are aware of. Azerbaijan tried to retake those adjacent regions, but it didn't succeed. After 4 years, July 2020, again, all of you are aware, in the month of July, there was another aggression conducted against Armenia on the border with Armenia in the Tavush region. Once again, Azerbaijan was not able to penetrate, but the striking feature was that it was, I mean, the clash was on the border with Armenia, and not in Nagorno-Karabakh or in the areas surrounding adjacent territories. There was an international call to end the fighting and actually not escalate. And Azerbaijan and Armenia actually promised not to escalate, and it seemed that it ended, but actually that was in July, before the September 27 fiercest fighting, the breaking of September 27 fiercest battle and fighting between both parties that is still going on. It entered its second month, as Sarah said a while ago, with no clear vision, idea of what could be the solution. Now, the rest of the time, I still have, I think, 15 minutes. Very quickly, I would like to refer to the actors now. Russia, Iran, Turkey. Now, the new development in this actually battle or fight started by Azerbaijan, supported by Turkey. The new development is that Turkey has become party to the conflict by supporting Azerbaijan militarily, because a few weeks ago there were military drills in Azerbaijan, and Turkish generals and actually were there, and after it broke, Turkey also deployed mercenaries from Syria and Libya to participate in the war and in the fighting. Also, assistance was rendered from Pakistan. So far, unclear, but we have sufficient evidence that people from Pakistan, mercenaries, are also participating. By the way, in the 1993-94 war, Afghan mercenaries participated also at that time. But this time, there is direct Turkish intervention, military intervention. Turkish F-16 aircraft participated in the fighting, and it shut down an Armenian aircraft that was in Armenia's airspace. This was very dangerous, actually, violation. And the deployment of the mercenaries, the training, the deployment, and the assistance actually rendered by Turkey to Azerbaijan made Turkey directly being involved as a party in the conflict. Now, you have been following the details, I'm sure. I will not go to details here, military operations, whatever. I mean, and you are aware that the Azerbaijani army is using Turkish sophisticated weaponry, Turkish and Israeli drones that were purchased already from Israel and from Turkey, and a new status quo is created now. The previous status quo, that was the ceasefire line between the Azerbaijanis and the Karabakh forces, actually changed, and we have a new status quo now because the Azerbaijani, I don't know if the army is fighting in the front line, because the mercenaries are fighting, and Azerbaijani soldiers are at the far behind those mercenaries who are fighting. Anyway, the change in the status quo is that Azerbaijanis have been able to penetrate in Fizuli, in Jabrail, in Hadrut, and they have been trying to proceed actually forward and try to capture the Lachin corridor. threatening certainly Nagorno-Karabakh itself. Well, I mean, condemnations from everywhere, two attempts, actually three attempts of ceasefire, one mediated by Russia, another one by France, is insisting that the Russian mediated ceasefire should be respected, and those ceasefires were mediated for the sake of humanitarian issues and considerations. So we can call them humanitarian ceasefires, but even the humanitarian ceasefires were not respected by the Azerbaijani side because, as I told you a while ago, the Azerbaijani army is actually in a better position, and President Aliyev wanted to retake more territory and impose afterwards his terms on a ceasefire that could be agreed on. So after the failure of the two ceasefires on October 26, the United States stepped in and tried to mediate a ceasefire, but it also broke. Azerbaijan didn't respect it. And the dangerous thing is that President Erdogan has been challenging the Trump administration and the United States, saying that the American government don't know who are we. I'm quoting him. This quotation belongs to him. Now, one of the unfortunate things is that the timing of the attack, and it seems that Azerbaijan and Turkey chose a timing when the United States, actually the attention of the United States is on the elections now. Russia's attention has been on Syria and Libya, where a proxy war is going on between Russia and Turkey. In Syria, Russia and Turkey are coordinating to find a solution to the Syrian conflict, and Russia, it seems, needs Turkey's cooperation in Idlib. So Russia, since 2015, after it intervened militarily in Syria, has been occupied there. Concerning the timing, so you could realize the critical timing when a Turkish-Azerbaijani decision was made in order to trigger and start the battle, the fiercest battle since 2006. Always there have been violations to the ceasefire, but no large-scale military operation has been conducted in the way that it is conducted now. So the big question is now how Russia would be able to mediate, because Russia has, it seems, Russia has lost leverage over the Azerbaijani government, President Aliyev himself. Now Aliyev is delivering statements from a stronger position. Now the critical issue is, but let me tell you the following. I mean, the drones were decisive in turning actually or influencing the operations on the battlefield. And as I told you, the drones were purchased by from Turkey and from Israel. I would like to open a parenthesis here. There have been criticisms from the Armenians from the Armenian community, by the Armenian authorities, by the Armenian president, by the prime minister, I mean, asking Turkey not to deliver any more drones to Azerbaijan and ending the delivery of such weapons, destructive weapons to Azerbaijan. The Israeli High Court rejected because it didn't find sufficient proof that those weapons are used in order to commit war crimes in Nagorno-Karabakh. Within this context, I would like to also bring to your attention that there is the position of the Israeli government aside, there is sympathy by many Israelis calling their, from the academic community in Israel and outside Israel, and from a number of Israeli organizations asking their government, first of all, expressing solidarity and asking their government to cease, to stop the delivery of weapons. For example, although time is running, but I would like to bring two Israeli historians from the academic community who wrote a book in 2019, published a book, Benny Morris and Dror Zeivi, for example, considered that Azerbaijan has no justification, I'm quoting them, no justification to launch such a fierce attack against the Karabakh Armenians. And also they condemn and criticize Turkey's policies, Erdogan's aggressive, and they say perhaps expansionist foreign policy that we witnessed in Syria, Libya, and Iraq. So also, I mean, both historians say that they believe that they should not, that their government should not supply arms to any of the sides in this clearly immoral and vicious campaign launched by Turkey and Azerbaijan. They also believe, they say, as do many other Jews believe, I'm quoting them, that that Jews themselves, having suffered atrocities in the past, should not assist an act of violence directed against a nation that has suffered as much as the Armenians did through modern history. And there is interesting expression expressing solidarity with the Armenians by the Massachusetts Jewish leaders who stood with Armenian neighbors, and they called for US humanitarian intervention. Jeremy Burton, for example, the executive director of the Jewish Community Relations Council, was very clear in his statement. And he said, we in Boston have a long-standing relationship with the local Armenian community and have been in touch with them in recent weeks about ways in which we can show our support. Also, I mean, in October 2014, there was a press release by the Jewish Community Relations Council and that expressed solidarity with, it says, the communique says, solidarity with our friends and neighbors in Armenian American community, and a big number of Massachusetts rabbis and Massachusetts Jewish institutional leaders signed actually that letter that was written and directed to President Trump. It is also important in this context to say that Anka is doing a great job to exert pressure on the government of the United States, and Congressman actually also did a great job, although it was Sherman, Cox, and their colleagues, without mentioning all the names because there is no time. They called for an implementation of the Magnitsky sanctions against Azeri officials under the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act that sent a firm response, according to them, from the United States to Turkey and Azerbaijan. Now, to close, because I think I have 1 minute, one more minute, so that the organizers give time to questions. Now, what I would like to say is that, as I said, in Geneva there are talks now going on, and it seems that now the Minsk Group is persistent to impose a ceasefire. That has been an Armenian demand, yes, in order to stop the fighting, the attack on civilians. I forgot to mention, international humanitarian law has been violated since September 27. The maternity hospital was actually attacked, I think, yesterday. So attacks on civilians is something shouldn't take place. However, no laws, humanitarian laws, and no war laws are being respected, because war also has its laws. Anyway, so in Geneva, hopefully, there will be enough pressure today by the OSCE, by the co-chairs of the OSCE Minsk Group, to impose a ceasefire. That is an Armenian demand. Concurrently, I think the Azerbaijani demand will be also met. I don't know, I am just predicting, because Mr. Aliyev is asking for a clear timeline so that the Karabakh forces withdraw from the adjacent territories, and then both parties would go to the negotiations table. It seems that the issue of the observers are on the table, but so far we don't know. I mean, there has been a Russian proposal in September, by mid-September, that Russia is ready to deploy observers in order to impose a ceasefire and monitor the situation. So wait and see. We don't know what will happen today. And although there is a lot that I can deliver to you, but I think I consumed my time. And Sarah, would you please take on and see if we could if we could address some questions? And thank you very much.
First of all, I'm so impressed that you managed in 45 minutes to give such a comprehensive summary of history, but also the current actors and the ever-changing, it feels like an ever-shifting dynamic on the ground. So thank you, Dr. Geukjian. That was tremendous. I feel like I need to take notes on how you did that. We have a couple of questions that have already come up in the chat, and so I'd like to hand over to you. There are a number of questions about the role of Russia. And, you know, one that popped out for me is the following. By supporting Azerbaijan, Turkey has encroached on Russia's sphere of influence in the South Caucasus. And what is Russia's red line?
All right. This is a very important question. Russia's red lines are preventing Turkey from entering the South Caucasus. Russia has lost leverage. Yes, this is true. But at the same time, President Putin is very determined to prevent Turkey from entering the South Caucasus. However, I mean, again, we cannot predict, because as I told you, and up-to-date information just to deliver to you, it seems that Turkey is trying to become a party and join the negotiations. Erdogan proposed on 28 October, a few days ago, Erdogan proposed a joint effort with Russia. With Russia, he called it 2+2, which means Russia, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Russia, Armenia, and let me quote Erdogan after holding a telephone conversation with Putin on the 28th of October. Erdogan told the lawmakers in the Turkish parliament that he held a phone call with Putin, and he told him the following. Now I quote him: "If you want, we can solve this together. You can hold talks with Pashinyan, and I can talk with my brother Aliyev." So I think he sent a signal to Putin that we can do it if I become a party to the negotiations. So 2+2. I don't know, we don't know if President Putin is to submit. Now, within this context, I would like to say, yes, I mean, I said already that Russia lost leverage, but it would be a blow to Russian foreign policy also if Russia would agree to such a proposal. It could agree in return of what, I don't know, but could be Syria. But if Russia would agree, then that would be very dangerous for Russia, because once it allows Turkey to enter the South Caucasus, then Turkey would easily penetrate to Central Asia and influence the Muslim populations of Central Asia, and the consequences of that would be certainly very negative, bad, because Russia itself has been fighting fighting a war against international terrorism, extremism, so on and so forth. So that is the red line. I mean, that is the red line. And Mr. Putin has been trying to maintain his influence in former Soviet space. And by this we mean in the former republics of the Soviet Union. Would his, I mean, we are 2020. If we go backward 100 years, in 1920, I mean, the Red Army entered the Caucasus and Sovietized actually the republics. Would history, I mean, repeat itself? I mean, the coming days would provide evidence for that. I don't know, but that's a red line. That's a red line. So we cannot separate, what I'm trying to say also, we cannot separate the regional dimension from this conflict. We cannot. I mean, what is happening in Syria, just on 27 October, because this is important. Let me, Sarah, mention this, please. On 27 October, Russia actually strike actually a Turkish-backed military camp in the Idlib province in Syria called Jabhat al-Tahrir al-Wataniya. This is a pro-Turkish opposition group. According to intelligence agencies, I mean, mercenaries, as I said, were being delivered to Azerbaijan by Turkey, were sent to Azerbaijan by Turkey, deployed, and it seems that that strike was a message to Turkey to make it clear that, I mean, mercenaries in the South Caucasus are not allowed, and because that would pose a terrorist threat, extremist threat, not only to Russia but also to Iran, and that's why Iran is on alert now, and it has deployed its forces on the Armenian-Iranian border. So terrorism is also a red line. Extremism is also a red line in the South Caucasus, and that's why Russia, I mean, could talk to Turkey and see, I mean, what common ground could be found between the two. Thank you.
Your answer was so wonderful that it actually rolled into the question that we have here, which is, what are the positions of Arab, and I'll add to that, Muslim states, and what is their role in the current conflict, if at all?
You mean the Muslim states? The Muslim states, I mean, in the Middle East and elsewhere? This is what is meant by the question?
I believe so. It's a very broad one, but I think you can choose to answer it as you see fit.
The Muslim populations in Central Asia, I already referred to that. Now, Mr. Putin, since 2015, when he intervened in Syria, he made it very clear to the Muslim countries in the Middle East, including Saudi Arabia and including the Gulf monarchies, that that Russia is not against Muslims, and that this the intervention in Syria is not should not be explained and examined within a religious context, because the military intervention in Syria, the aim was not to support a particular religious group against another, and he made this very clear. I think the same applies now to the Caucasus. So this conflict is not over religion, not at all. This conflict is an ethno-territorial conflict, very difficult to solve. Compromises are very difficult to reach at. This is the complexity of such conflicts. So no religion at all. There may be, I mean, certain responses from here and there, but that should not be explained and analyzed within the religious context, because it is not about religion. Russia has a big Muslim population in Central Asia, and it's very cautious, very cautious, not to antagonize not only that population, but also not to antagonize the Muslim countries in the Middle East and elsewhere.
I have another question that was sent to me, which is that so far there have been 2 ceasefires, negotiated ceasefires, and both have appeared to have failed. And I recall that actually the first one, I believe Azerbaijan broke the ceasefire within 4 minutes, so record time. How do we negotiate a ceasefire that will be adhered to and respected?
All right. Respected. The three ceasefire: 10 October, 18 October, 26 October. President Trump was very optimistic when he mediated actually the administration. Secretary of State Pompeo, and he congratulated the Armenians and Azerbaijanis that there was a ceasefire on 26 October, but very quickly it was not respected. Now, how a ceasefire could be reached in Geneva today or tomorrow, I would like to emphasize and repeat what I said a while ago. Although, just to borrow from William Zartman, although probably it is not the right moment to impose a ceasefire. Right moment, this term belongs to William Zartman, but it seems that there is an Armenian demand to a ceasefire, and at the same time, there is an Azerbaijani demand of a clear timeline ensuring Azerbaijan that immediately after the ceasefire, serious negotiations would commence in order to address the conflict by peaceful means from now on. So this balance between the Armenian demand of a ceasefire and the Azerbaijani demand of a clear timeline to negotiate on that basis could facilitate the ceasefire and the respect of the ceasefire, because negotiations cannot commence at a time when the battlefield is still not silent, war going on. No party would go to the negotiations table while fighting is going on the battlefield. So that is that sort of balance could make a ceasefire respected now, because we have got a different situation, not similar to 10 October, and as I said a while ago, the other ceasefires, and not similar to the other ceasefires. Anyway, this is my my analysis. Things may go in the wrong direction, and we may not have a respected ceasefire once again. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Dr. Geukjian. I'm mindful of the time and the fact that we've run just a little bit over, but we're actually at an hour. So with tech issues and with everything else. So I want to thank you so much, Dr. Geukjian, for just such a tremendous presentation and for answering so many of our questions. I also want to answer to one of the questions. One of you asked, how do we get involved in stopping genocide broadly? Which is a big question. And so I actually would like to drill down instead and say, for those of you who are interested in learning more about this conflict and getting involved, I urge you to reach out to and check out the Armenian National Committee of America, or ANCA. You can also consider donating to the Armenia Fund, which has been providing humanitarian relief to those who are affected by the violence. And also reach out to your elected officials, voice your concern, advocate for a genuine ceasefire and ideally long-term a peace agreement. I'd like to leave each of you with the first stanza of a poem that was written by Daniel Varougian. He was arrested on April 24th, 1915, and unfortunately later murdered. But I was going through and I was thinking about this conflict, I was thinking about this talk, and I came across his poem, Understand, and it begins with, at the eastern part of the earth, let there be peace. Let sweat, not blood, flow in the broad vein of the furrow, and at the toll of each hamlet's bell, let there rise hymns of exaltation. I'm going to leave you all with that wish and hope that may there again be true peace in the eastern region of Armenia. I hope all of you stay well and healthy. Thank you again for joining us for this program. We hope to be in touch with you in the future, and may there be a lasting peace in Armenia and soon.
Thank you. Thank you.